was going on really well. The idea was to throw the ball to set up the run, and I thought that went pretty well. The run efficiency was pretty good. The pass efficiency was pretty good. Probably need to hit some more shots and big plays to flip the field more in a hurry and create more scoring opportunities down into the red zone. Defensively, we played fairly solid overall, but in a tight game like that, we didn't in the final analysis didn't stop enough scoring drives, didn't force enough field goals on the two long drives that they had. They were able to convert those into touchdowns, and that really hurt us. And then we didn't get any takeaways on defense or special teams either. The coverage, as has been the pattern this year, the punt coverage and kickoff coverage continues to be really solid.
Yep.
And the return game, kickoff return showed some real life. We were able to get the ball out into Fresno State safeties, one tackle away from breaking the whole thing, and twice outside the 25-yard line. So improved in that area. Punt return game was disorganized, and we have to do a better job on that. It starts with me.
Okay, based on the things you just said, I want to hit on a couple of things. You talked about getting into good field position on offense, which you did, but you started off in a rough spot. The average starting field position was the 21, and that's not optimal. And so the offense doing what it did to get where it wanted to go was good, but you were backed up far too much most of the night.
Yeah, I think, and when you talk average starting field position, I think the turnover deep in our end, and then us not getting any turnovers, that was probably the biggest difference in having a little closer or being able to take advantage of it in that area.
The 2 touchdown drives are keyed on 2 big plays, the only 2 big plays of the night. Fresno State literally, now they ran 60 plays. They literally had 2 plays of more than 50 yards. Mm-hmm. It was a 50-yard completion, it was a 35-yard completion, and on the strength of those 2 plays, they scored their lone 2 touchdowns.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, we had a pass interference call that hurt us as well and kept one of the drives going and gave them some chunk yardage.
Okay, the call itself, how do you feel about it when you went back and watched it, either live or after?
Oh, that's what. So I'm not in the habit of disagreeing with calls. Used to be, as a head coach, you get fined. I don't know if an assistant coach gets fined for that, but
could you see what the official was seeing?
I can see what the official was seeing. The reality is, had it been a better thrown ball, we would have probably intercepted it. Chris had excellent coverage. He recognized a 2-to-1 read and came off the 1 and went to the 2. So he was covering 2 guys on that play. But it was his own coverage, so that might be overstating it. But he had eyes on 2 guys, as he should have. And then he just broke on the ball faster than the defender did, and ended up contacting him. And the fact that he was playing the ball, I thought, would allow for some gray area, and perhaps the official didn't need to make that call. But those, as we've talked about before, those officials want to make the right call. They're highly motivated to do that, and there was certainly room to make that call as well.
So the impact of 2 big plays on Fresno State offense, we talked about. The impact of only 3 penalties. 3 penalties is a good number, a manageable number. One's the PI we just talked about. The other is a false start that I think takes you from 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 6. That's big. And then the other one is a substitution call when you go from 1st and goal from the 9 backed up to the 14. He never got back to the 9. So it's just the impact of these few plays for this kind of team this year, it seems, in BYU is just magnified.
It is. And overall, at this time of the year, really in the second half of the season, sometimes it's a good practice for us as coaches to start looking at where we rank nationally in statistics, some of the markers that we feel like would be important goals. Penalties is an enigma for us. We're fairly good in the penalty area. We're in the top half of the country, one of the least penalized. But the penalties that we have had have been oftentimes mental errors. By contrast, we talk about false starts and things like that, or alignment errors or substitution penalties. Those are killers so much more than a cornerback trying to make a play and running into a DB. Some penalties are going to happen through the course of aggressive play. Other penalties need to be taken care of by organization and better coaching.
Penalties aren't a great win-loss correlator. Some of BYU's best teams have been highly penalized.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of great offensive teams do get a lot of penalties, but it seems for this BYU team, not so much the number, it's the when and the wheres and how well you can recover, and it's been a struggle this year that way.
That's right. That's true.
So the substitution infraction penalty was big, taking you back to outside of 1st and goal range, inside the 9. There was a penalty on special teams that was declined, one we haven't seen yet this year, and it said, I guess it would be that both Hiva and Squally were on the same special team. Is that right?
That's right. They're on the same special team, and that's a critical error on my part. They ended up declining it, but had it been a 4th and 5 or less situation, it would have given them a first down, and really that was just a terrible mistake on my part not to go through the roster. Each week when I change the depth on the special teams, I should be scouring the roster and making sure that we don't have duplicate numbers. We have a lot of great tradition here at BYU and a lot of retired jersey numbers, and that makes for some doubled up numbers here and there. And as guys move up and down the depth chart and work their way on or off special teams, it creates a challenge for me, and I need to rise to that challenge.
So obviously they hadn't played together obviously until that moment in the season, or at least they hadn't been noticed.
Yes.
But I presume it's the former, not the latter.
That's right. Yeah, we had an injury, and so Squally stepped into that lineup, and just a mistake on my part not to follow through and make sure that those guys they can both play on punt return, but just not at the same time.
So I look at the Fresno State game, and I see a Fresno team that was, and this is not any kind of denigration, they were good but not great. They were good enough to win on that night, doing a lot of things you'd like to do, in particular not giving it away. They have two giveaways in the last 5 games, so they're careful. Again, they weren't a big play offense, but they were just good enough at the right moments to be better than BYU by 7 points.
That's right. Yeah, they kept the ball in front of them. You mentioned it earlier. We did not keep the ball in front of us twice. Got beat twice down the boundary for 50-yard gains, 50-plus yard gains, and really cost us. And then we had on our offense, we didn't get those chunks, and then we turned the ball over once, and they didn't, and so that ended up being the difference in the game.
Kind of being your ball game. BYU ends up again. It's points, not yards. BYU has a few more yards, more first downs, a lot of good things you want to see happen for the third downs. It was BYU's first 50% third down day of the year, and normally that's a really strong indicator of success. On this night, it just was not. Enough other things didn't go your way.
That's right.
I want to talk about briefly the fact that Squally Canada emerges, and this is more or less the assistant head coach cap coming on right now. You talked about him jumping in on a special team, but it was his impact in the run game that really benefited you. He ends up 7 yards per carry, about 85 yards on the day. Didn't get carries till the second quarter. I think the game plan was originally to give Braden a look and work Squally in. The decision that led to that, and could you have gone to him earlier, or you just wanted to see how Braden did in the first quarter, do you think, as a team?
Well, I think, I think Braden ran really well when he was in there. He was, I think, the common thing is to try to get the defense softened up a little bit earlier in the game with both the passing game and then a more physical runner. To Squally's credit, and I actually talked to him about this morning, he ran the most physical that he's ever ran. I think that other times in the year he's gone up, and if the hole hasn't quite been there, he's just kind of softened his way and fit into where the hole should be.
A little more tentative earlier.
A little more tentative. Yeah. That's a good word for it. And he was not. He kept his knees driving. He protected the football with good ball security habits. He had the one that was ended up going to a replay. But just an excellent game by him and a big step forward in his career. And I think competing with Braden helped that. And
he had just come off of injury as well. A common theme. Braden indeed is the only back who's played every game for you this year.
He has, and yeah, there's those guys. They've had bad luck, bad misfortune on that. So we got to keep those guys that are healthy coming along and getting better. And I thought both those backs you mentioned have really improved over the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely. All right, Coach Lamb is with us until the bottom of the hour. Your questions for Ed using the hashtag #CCBYU on Twitter. Hashtag #CCBYU for Coach Lamb. Your questions later in this half hour. We'll come back with more of the Coordinator's Corner at JCW's in Provo on ESPN 960, BYU Radio, and BYU Football Facebook Live.
Okay, that's good. Whoa, Danny.
Sports Network. Let's head back to JCW's in Provo and the voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell.
Welcome back to JCW's here in Provo. Greg Wrubell with Ed Lamb, BYU's special teams coordinator, assistant head coach, and safeties coach as we look back on BYU's 20-13 setback at Fresno State. The Cougars at UNLV on Friday night. It's intuitive that teams like to play with the lead. For BYU, it's almost an imperative. When you guys lead at halftime or first quarter, third quarter, almost unbeatable in the Sitake era. Tougher time coming back. And again, it's an intuitive thing, but it seems like the starts for BYU, if you get off to a decent start, you're going to have a decent day, and you were down 10-0 after one. Outscored Fresno the rest of the way, but the opening quarter was almost, it didn't really seal the deal, but it put you in arrears, and it's been tough for BYU that way.
It did. Yeah, it was a really tough first quarter on our defense, and the guys made some adjustments. I thought we weren't playing with very much confidence early on. That was a real issue for us on defense.
How do you note that? How do you assess that, judge that?
Well, the first place my eyes always go is the secondary, and I want to see, do we have the same, are we we call it challenging. Coach Guilford and I in the secondary, we play a lot of man coverage, and we gang up on the run up front. And so the idea is that we have to have confidence in the secondary and challenge the receivers, not give up easy routes. And I felt like that we were playing with too much of a cushion early in the game, and even on the play. Sometimes when a DB has, it sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes when a DB has too much cushion, that's when you can get beat deep as well, because it's hard to recognize the ground being eaten up. You know, when a guy's backed off significantly, he kind of in his mind thinks, well, I gotta close this cushion down. And we want to challenge directly from the line of scrimmage. We want to challenge early, challenge often, challenge all the way down the field. And I thought we did not start doing that until about the third drive.
Okay. You hit safeties real quickly, or secondary. They weren't terribly involved in a lot of the defensive numbers we note, but beyond the numbers, what did you see from your guys?
I see young corners getting better through game experience, good and bad, making plays, and then given in this season, we don't have the luxury of being able to point to plays on Sunday very often that hurt our defense but didn't hurt our chance to win. And so these hurt these guys. They work incredibly hard, and they want to be good, and they're still young and learning the game. The safeties continue to tackle well. Fresno's offense really worked the boundaries. They didn't work down the middle of the field very much, and so the safeties weren't challenged really in the route combination, in the patterns, but they tackled well, kept the ball in front of us in the run, and they've done a good job. Those Micah and Zane are particularly two good tacklers. They continue to do a good job of that.
And because the safeties weren't involved a lot in having to stop the run, it credits the front seven, and no runs of 10-plus yards from Fresno State on Saturday. You can live with that.
Yeah, that's good. Good, solid defense. The guys played incredibly hard up front, particularly the three linebackers. Their defensive ends played really hard. We had a rotational system at the defensive tackles, and some guys played better than others. Kesney and Meti both played excellent and with great effort and technique inside. They were two of our better players on the inside this week.
Special team standouts. You kind of overall assessed how the special teams performed in all the phases in our first segment, but Rhett Almond had a 2-for-2 night on field goals, and I was waiting for it, begging for it, got that long field goal. 46-yarder, career-long for Rhett, the longest field goal BYU's kicked since the Utah game with Jake Oldroyd more than a year ago. And so Rhett had a perfect night kicking it, and the fact that he got that 46-yarder out there gives you a point-scoring weapon that you're able to use. I'm sure you feel good about how he played.
Excellent job by him. Yeah, and I was really hard on him for last week, both in the game during San Jose State. I think that he could have performed better, and then during the week I was really put him under a lot of pressure situations during practice. I mean, everything from just standing there while he's trying to make a kick and punching him in the shoulder and telling him that he's got to do better for our team and trying to create practice pressure, and he responded really well this week. Really proud of him. Really pleased with the punt team was on point. Excellent punt average, no opportunities for them to return the ball. That continues to be a strength. And our biggest strength, we don't talk about it a lot, but our biggest strength has been all year has been the kickoff coverage team. There's a kickoff efficiency. I know you look at punt efficiency, kickoff efficiency. We're number one in the nation right now and have been for a couple of weeks running. And Corey Edwards had kind of taken a back seat to Andrew Mickelson on his kicks for a couple of weeks. Corey came in and kicked an excellent kick just right outside the numbers, right at the goal line, right where we like it.
Right at the pylon, it seemed, yeah.
I think we tackled it in the 13-yard line or something like that.
And all the punts were efficient. As Coach mentioned, it was a good day that way as well. Rhett's hit 55 consecutive PATs. The only thing stopping him from getting the record, which is 70, might be not scoring enough touchdowns. Hopefully you find 15 more touchdowns here in the rest of the season.
Sure.
That would be ideal. But he's been nails, and you can see it in college and pros. Granted, pros are backed up a little bit, but PATs aren't always a given, and he's been done very well that way.
He sure has. It's a great story. Just like quarterbacks, when things aren't going well, the kicker takes a lot of heat. But for him to walk onto this team, it predates me, but for him to walk on as a punter with no kicking experience, see an opportunity, become the best kicker that we have on the team, and then continue to get better throughout his career. It's really a great story.
If he doesn't miss any more PATs, he'll end up as the most efficient PAT kicker in BYU football history by percentage. And his field goal rate, minimum 2 seasons played, and he's played 2 seasons, field goal rate is number 2 all time at BYU. So what you're asking him to do, he's generally done very well.
We are. And what we've continued to ask him to do is to stretch his capacity, to stretch his range. And he took a big step forward with that this week. And as I said to him in front of I'm big into public accountability for myself and the players. And I told him, okay, you've now exposed your range, and we expect that to become routine.
And you talked about putting him under practice pressure.
Yeah.
You put him under game pressure the week before. You said after he missed the 33-yarder, make your next one or you're not my starting kicker anymore, I think is what you said. Paraphrasing.
I gave him the choice. I said, I can take pressure off of you, and I can do the right thing here. When a guy misses a tackle, you put a new linebacker in, etc. We can do the same thing with kickers. And if I do that, you'll still be around. But whether the next guy makes it or not. But if you go out and miss another one, you're done. And he said, I've got it. I got this, and I was proud of him for stepping up and making that. That was a big time pressure kick that he made. We're going back to San Jose,
right? But still, he's made everything since the ultimatum, if you will.
Everything since the ultimatum.
All right. Before the break, I want to hit a question that is more offensive based, but a general question. It's about Tanner Mangum and his toughness. Yeah. He re-injures the previously injured ankle late first half, and he's done for the time. They cart him off. John Deere and him go off to the locker room. But he comes back, and I noticed, even just in the pre-second half warm-ups, that he wasn't ginger as if, maybe it's a little too tender for the second half. He was going after it hard just in warm-up throws, and I saw somebody that wanted to be back on the field really hard. Yeah. And then he came out and did, I thought, well in the second half. And I don't know if you see what I see, but I just saw a more energized and eager quarterback, even though he was injured. And then to see him go down with another separate and much more serious injury on the opposite leg was kind of heartbreaking, because I saw a guy that really wanted to get that one done for you guys Saturday night.
He sure did, and he played his guts out, played his best game, and really played within the system. He looked at he was making his reads correctly, was delivering the ball on time. Our pass efficiency was very good. We needed to hit some shots, and we didn't quite do that, but the game wasn't over either at the time, and we were very much in the game at the time when he went out of the game. I'm really proud of the way he responded. I had the pleasure to sit with him the night before the women's basketball game, the night before we traveled to Fresno, and his sister plays on the team, and there wasn't very much crowd there, so we saw each other, and we just started the visit. And he's an incredibly mentally tough young man, and who's at a very pivotal time in his life, as all these young guys are. And to see his growth, throughout the season, and to see what he was starting to do there within this system of offense at Fresno, it was exciting, and I was really enjoying it. I was celebrating with him over there on the sideline, and to see him go out was so disappointing. It's not an unusual injury when a guy plays through a significant injury on one side of his body to get an Achilles like that, but you can't protect him from it. You can't say, well, your ankle's hurt, so we're going to not play you because your other Achilles might rupture. But that was really unfortunate.
What do you know about the injury relative to when he might be able to get back? Everyone's different, I suppose, but are there some generalities you can kind of count on right now with that?
I haven't had a player that went through it. The only guy I know that had that in a similar situation was Ty, and so just in talking to him, I think it was a 4 to 6 month recovery for him.
Okay, and then Kalani, we'll take a break here in a second. Kalani said in his media gathering this morning that it's basically a 3-man deal right now to compete who starts at UNLV between Joe and Bo, and Cody Wilstead, I guess, is still in the mix. Is that fair to say right now?
It is, yeah. That's all of those guys have their strengths, and they'll all have an opportunity this week. I mean, we obviously their practice competition's a little bit overrated, so I think Kalani and Ty probably certainly have their depth chart, which is a clear 1, 2, and 3 at this point. And there's I'm not sure exactly how that fits in, but I think all 3 of those guys need to prepare to be the one.
Bo 1, Joe 2, Cody 3, right? 1, 2, 3. Or not?
No,
because Bo came in first the other night.
He did, yeah. He did. I'm not saying no that I disagree with that. I'm just saying
that they have their ideas.
At this point in the week, my head is really into the defense more than the offense.
Short week, so a lot to get done here between now and UNLV. All right, next segment, hashtag #CCBYU for your questions for Coach Ed Lamb. This is the Coordinator's Corner on BYU Radio, ESPN 960, and BYU Football Facebook Live.
Hi, I'm Ned Siegfried. It's great to see you.
It is our final segment with BYU's special teams coordinator, Ed Lamb, defensive coordinator, Elisa Tuiaki, coming up moments from now. Ed with us to the bottom of the hour here at JCW's in Provo for the Coordinator's Corner. Your questions for the coach coming in at hashtag #CCBYU. That's hashtag #CCBYU on Twitter for Coach Lamb. We'll get to those in just a second. One kind of random question before we get to those, and that deals with your punt return. On a handful of occasions, you'll throw a second returner back and involve some misdirection, deception. It maybe hasn't gone off the way you'd exactly like it yet, but we saw a bit of it again against Fresno State. The design behind that, the intentions, and how it's maybe been executed this year.
Yeah, it's a high risk, high reward situation, and the worst possible scenario is when the kicker splits the two returners and puts a lot of depth under it.
Let's say 66 yards, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just didn't work out, and that's completely on me. I'm comfortable making taking that risk, and on behalf of the team, it's my job to decide to take that risk. It's it's been successful in the past, and it was from a setup standpoint, it was very successful. All of the coverage guys went with our main returner, and the off returner just wasn't able to get over there and get that. But it's a trick. It's not something that you need to work on when you're scoring a lot of points on offense. It's not worth the risk. But when we need to get something started, and our punt return game and kickoff return game needs to take some risk to get going, and we need to do some creative things.
It's a shot in the arm play. And what's the key to making it happen, to make it go off the way you want it?
The key to making it happen is a shorter kick that usually, what I work hard to study the amount of what we call shanks by the punter and which direction that the punter will generally shank it. And so you're trying to take a calculated guess based on field position and the opponent, and whether the ball's on the left hash or in the middle or the right hash, and what the punter would tend to do based on situation. And so it was the correct situation according to the risk analysis that I made, but it didn't work. And the coach's job is to make sure we do the thing that works every time, and it didn't work.
But that punter had a good body of work to that point, and he's averaging 40 plus around, and he unloads a 66.
That's his pattern was long punts and short punts, and so we were trying to catch him on a short punt. But he really swings hard at it. He doesn't have great consistency. He has a great, excellent average, and against us, he punted the heck out of the ball.
All right, question from Jeffrey Butler on Twitter, hashtag #CCBYU. Do you feel players are spending enough time on their own perfecting their craft, and will this season help establish future habits moving forward for the players?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a two-part question, and the first is, I would say overall no, and it's not because we have any lack of desire to do that. I mean, players understand, and you know, every coach says, hey, you need to watch more film. You need to understand. We try to give assignments so that the players actually have a homework assignment to go and watch specific film in a targeted way. But the reality is, just like you and your job and me and my job and everybody out there that does their job, the longer we're in our jobs, the more we know how to take initiative to work harder in our jobs. And the less that we, you know, when you're talking about young players, it's not as simple as just going and watching video. They will go and do it. They'll follow through. They'll be diligent. But veteran players get so much more out of watching that video. And so while I don't chase these guys around, try to give them homework assignments, hold them accountable, quiz them, things like that, I think that our level is going to continue to rise in terms of what our players are doing away from the game to get better at the game. And I think the second part of that question
is if this season will help establish better habits moving forward.
Yes, and I've been telling our coaching staff that, you know, we have a daily staff meeting, and I've been saying that for weeks. Is, you know, it's great. Let's not all over it. You know, everybody wants to bring a lot of ideas and things, and that's fantastic. But we also have to keep in mind. I've been continuing to remind our staff this. Every member of this organization, every administrator, every player, every coach, every fan is trying to find ways to make themselves better, our program better, and we'll continue to do that. So we all have to give each other room too to grow together, and not be overreactive in any way. And I definitely think every one of our players will learn from this experience. My motto is hard times make strong men.
Every broadcaster wants to improve too, and I'm in that same boat. Last thing for you, Ed, before we let you go for the week. The obvious answer will be 3 wins, but what do you need to see in our final 3 games to show you and prove to you that you've got a good group and a solid group that knows how to finish strong?
We have to work and get better. I'm going to start offensively, which I probably shouldn't do. It's not my first area of responsibility, but it's an area that just coming out of these last couple of games, I feel like that when we did it, we really performed well and added momentum to the whole game and the whole team. And that's hitting shot plays, making big plays. We need to hit on our percentage of shots, and there needs to be improvement technically and tactically, and rising to the occasion is what you're talking about. So rising to the specific occasions will help us rise to this occasion and hopefully finish with some momentum. I think defensively it's a similar thing. We have to stop shot plays. We've been solid on defense. We don't give up a lot of scores. You know, we're fairly solid in that way, but we're not making the big plays at the right time to win games, and that's what great defenses do. We cannot call ourselves a good or great defense until we're doing that consistently. And then in the special teams, you know, obviously if guys can continue to cover in the coverage units when we're not winning, that's some motivated guys who are just putting their pride on the line. Love what those guys are doing, want to continue to see them do that, but I need to put a much bigger emphasis on the return game to spark our team.
Well, Ed, I know these Mondays could be a lot more enjoyable for you than they've been the last little while,
yeah.
But man, I sure appreciate the things I learned from you and the thoughts you share, and hopefully our fan base too picks up what I do and appreciates your contributions, because they're really valuable. So thank you again.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, that's Ed Lamb. Coach Elisa Tuiaki's coming up next here on the Coordinator's Corner at JCW's BYU Radio, ESPN 960, and BYU Football Facebook Live.
For over 100 years, the skilled electricians by BYU Local 3
How are you guys? Been better, but it's good to see you guys again. Thank you. Good? Okay. turn mine down a little?
We'll talk about this in the show.
Oh, just up a little bit. Up a little bit. Yeah. That's good.
Literally 2 chunk plays the whole day they had.
Pass. He doesn't catch anything but fades. And so we said, play this guy for deep balls. And he didn't.
All right, so welcome back to JCW's here in Provo, Utah for the Coordinator's Corner. Every week, Mondays, 12 to 1, we are here talking BYU football with 2 of the Cougars' 3 coordinators, Ed Lamb in the last half hour, talking special teams and more, of course, and BYU's defensive coordinator and D-line coach Elisa Tuiaki with me now for the second half hour. E, good to see you once again.
Thanks.
I say good to see you, and we'd love to see each other with even more anticipation if BYU were winning a few more games. Of course, it's a hard deal to come back every week and talk about the latest unfortunate result, but it's a 20-13 loss at Fresno State that showed a lot of good things, especially defensively. How do you view it in sum, and maybe in terms of a wrap-up?
You know, like you said, it wasn't bad. You know, we in the run game, that's probably going away from it. The 2 biggest disappointments are the way that we felt after. In the run game, I think it was 3.4 per carry, which isn't bad.
Oh, it's really good.
But
yeah.
When we needed the ball back, you know, when we ended up turning the ball over and trying to get the ball back, they ran the ball on us, got 2 first downs, which was a big disappointment. And it goes straight down to just technique, the way that they played the front, and not really the front as a whole, but the D tackles. And we talked about that, and it was, you know, addressing those issues. And today's practice, I mean, the D tackles came out kind of renewed and were just out to hurt people, which is good. And we need them to play that way. And that was probably one of the bigger things that just walking away from it, because I coached the guys. And,
yeah.
You know, it's just we weren't as stout as we needed to be. And then the 2 big plays that we gave up were both big plays that happened on the drives that they scored on. And
you only 2 touchdown drives.
Yeah, yep, on 2 touchdown drives. And one of them, you know, we ran a game up front with the D tackles, and one of them didn't loop like he was supposed to. He would have looped right into a sack, but he didn't do it. And you know, the corner didn't play as well with his technique. And then the other one was actually a blitz, where one guy just didn't do what he was supposed to and ended up knocking another guy off, and they were able to get the ball off. And so, you know, just miscues and just things that were all just really self-inflicted.
It's a game of moments, and sometimes teams that are struggling have a more difficult time overcoming those negative moments. The 2 pass plays we just referenced, 35-yard pass and 50-yard pass, are literally the only 2 pass plays of more than 15 yards. There were no chunk run plays of 10 yards or greater, and Fresno's a pretty good offensive balanced team that does have big play potential. So to that extent, you got a lot done what you wanted to get done, but the 2 big plays are the key plays in the 2 touchdown drives, and then when you generate only 13 points, it's tough to do it. I mean, 20 is a number you can probably deal with against Fresno State. 13 is probably not.
Yeah, it's tough, and you know, we still have to try to get the ball back, you know, and I thought that they were really good, and credit to them, about, you know, taking care of the ball, being really calculated as far as just risks that they took, and not turning the ball over. And they took care of the ball, and the one turnover that happened in the night was the one that really cost us the game.
Kind of seals the deal late.
Yeah, sealed the game late, and so we've got to find ways to create more takeaways, and really part of it is just capitalizing. I mean, there's opportunities on film for us to just make plays, and we're not capitalizing. There's one of the plays where we ended up getting a PI. We were in, you know, we were in a bailing corner coverage, and when the ball's up in the air, I mean, it's for you to go and take. And I know that the young man that made the mistake is really hard on himself about just getting better, and I think in the future he'll make those and make people pay for putting the ball up there.
Well, Ed said on that play, maybe a better throw results in a pick. I mean,
yeah,
because it was really not a great throw,
right,
and the PI was almost easier to call for the official because of that.
Right.
If it was more a 50-50 ball, I think maybe the play goes uncalled because Chris is in position to actually make a play.
Right, exactly.
Anyway.
He ends up running into the guy, and
yeah. Okay. you talk about 3.4 yards per rush allowed that night against a pretty good run team. BYU on the year is at 3.9 yards per rush allowed, and that puts BYU in about the top quarter nationally, 36th nationally in yards per rush allowed. And again, it's been 12 straight years. This would be 13 that BYU's under 4 yards per carry allowed. That is your strength and remains the strength of BYU, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's every single game plan that we've gone into is about stopping the run and creating third and long. You know, it wasn't always like that. We gave up a good amount of yards to certain teams.
Mississippi State,
and
for
some,
example.
yeah. Mississippi State ended up getting a lot, and some of them we spent a lot of time on the field, and just really kind of got worn down. But it's still the focus. We want to stop the run and create third downs and opportunities for us to get big plays.
Again, it didn't come in a win, but you allow 20 points, only 60 plays, no chunk run plays, just the 2 big chunk pass plays. Generally speaking, defense could do some things it felt good enough about, but it is a team game, and it's not going to be just one team, one side of the ball trying to win a football game for you. The takeaway issue we've kind of addressed all season long, right? Last year you had 31 takeaways in 13 games. This year just the 14 takeaways in 10 games, none against Fresno. Do you happen to know how many giveaways Fresno's had in the last 5 games?
I don't.
2.
Yeah,
Yes.
they do a good job taking care of it and just really calculated about, the quarterback is well coached. And, he's the kid from Oregon State.
Right,
that I
so you knew him, yeah.
And, he's not as good a quarterback as other guys that we faced, but they're really, really good about coaching him up and just, they didn't get very many yards, but it's just everything was calculated. They didn't shoot themselves in the foot, and that's that. I mean, the plan to win as far as just playing on both sides of the ball, playing really well. I thought they had a good game plan. And
until the final minutes of the game, there were no turnovers. And it turns out the one giveaway is the one deep in our own territory that allows them to kind of run it out. And with a struggling team, the margin gets really narrow. And one play like that can mean the difference, and it was kind of that night.
Yeah.
You'd like to see what would have happened had BYU been able to get a longer drive together. But, hey, it's a helmet to football hit. They hit him hard. Matt got rocked pretty good, and the ball popped loose.
Yep. And they made a play. They opportune moment, and they took advantage of it.
Okay, we'll take a break. Coach Eliza Tuiaki with me as we talk defense for BYU. Coming up, we'll look back again at a couple of Fresno State leftovers and ahead to UNLV. Now, that's a good run football team. It'll be a great matchup on Friday night down in Las Vegas. Your questions for Coach Tuiaki later in the show at the hashtag #CCBYU. CC for Coordinator's Corner. This is the Coordinator's Corner at JCW's in Provo on BYU Radio, ESPN 960, and BYU Football Facebook Live.
Picture this. You have a big change.
Thank you. Was Fred pretty close to good to go? Like, was he? Okay, here we go.
Let's rejoin the voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell.
BYU falls to Fresno State 20-13 last Saturday night in Fresno. BYU at UNLV this Friday night at Sam Boyd Stadium. Talking BYU defense with defensive coordinator, D-line coach Elisa Tuiaki. Sione Takitaki had a really active game, I thought, for you in Fresno. Would you say it's one of his better games, or did it just appear that way to us from up top?
No, he was the player of the game on defense for us when we ended up putting that together. Really, really productive game. I mean, he always plays hard. He always does. But, just productive and just dominant in what he was asking him to do. Still obviously mistakes. And, a guy like that who does make a lot of plays and has the potential sometimes will just freelance a little bit. And just kind of reeling him back in and getting him to do what we're asking him to do. Outside of that, he was phenomenal. I thought he did a really good job. He was a good player.
So the way you break it down, was Sione's effort a winning effort or a championship effort?
He was a champion. He was a champion and a player of the game. Yep.
Good stuff. Fred Warner was banged up in the previous game, and there was some question whether he could get ready to go against Fresno State, but he did. First of all, the effort to get him ready to play, and then how he played against Fresno.
Yeah, we rested him the whole week, and just Steve Pincock, our head trainer, took care of him. And the important thing for us was just to get him to the fight because of all the experience he has. Obviously you'd like a guy to practice, but for us it was mostly just making sure that he was ready and feeling confident running on his leg, and he did a good job. Did a really good job for us. Okay,
what do you hope comes out of this year defensively that will most assist and benefit you in next season and seasons to come? What do you think you can take from this to really build on moving forward?
I think we've got to string some wins together to really start to feel confident. Because I think that one stat, or the most important stat, which is winning and losing, kind of hangs over you a little bit and just feels a little dreary when you're doing some good things. And so, we've got to win. We've got to win. We've got to create takeaways. We got all the goals that we went into last year as well as this year remains the same. We've got to continue to create big plays. I think that's going to be good for us moving forward, as well as creating takeaways.
With certain goals off the table now for BYU at 2-8, not playing in the postseason, what are some things, maybe talking points, Kalani's hit with the group to make sure he gets what he wants from them here in the final 3 games, and you too?
Yeah, coaching staff as well as all the players, the big thing has really been about self-accountability to the team and to yourself and to your family, those who you're playing for, and those who have sacrificed to put those players in those seats. And a lot of times, seasons like this, and people kind of just forget about that and just want to feel sorry for themselves and start, kind of going away from the plan. And so, really being accountable, just doing things really on and off the field the right way. And in our team meeting this morning, he didn't really talk football at all. He just talked about everybody making a decision to be accountable to themselves, and by doing that, they're going to be accountable to the team. And I think it's a good message for the kids to just keep pushing forward and just take care of your business. There's always other people that are affected. For us on this team, the guy next to you that you're playing for, but also your family members, your future family. If you're not a guy that's not married, and the guys that are married, your current wife and kids. I mean, they're all affected by the way that you handle yourself on and off the field. And I think it was an important message for them to hear at that time.
For most every program, dip seasons or down seasons happen. Hasn't happened at BYU for a long time, which is credit to BYU. But whether it's Fresno, who was 1-11 last year and playing in a bowl this year, or Broncos Virginia team, not very many wins last year, bowl eligible this year, and that's just 2 examples of many, many, many. You can make a recovery, and you can be back where you want to be, and it doesn't take 4 or 5 seasons to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely fixable, and we see it. I know the offensive guys are working hard, and Kalani as well is working with them about the corrections that we need to make and getting things back on track. And defensively, we see it the same way, making the improvements, getting the right guys in the right spot. Some movement that we're probably going to have after the season as far as personnel, guys moving to different spots and doing all that. I think we're excited about the future, and obviously we're playing for now. We need to win these next 3, but we're also looking forward to the future, and are hungry to just get back to a bowl game right now already, thinking about that.
There are people who say that you are what your record says you are, but you certainly didn't see a 2-8 team when you started camping in August, and you probably look at your group right now and still go, man, we're better than 2 wins. Do you believe that in your heart?
I do. For whatever reason, and offensively, defensively, special teams with Galani we're working on. There's some wins that we left out there, and there's definitely some teams that thought we had a good shot against winning, but just didn't happen that way. Not the way the ball bounced, but I thought that there was definitely some good teams we played, and you look at early at LSU, it was a very competitive game, at least for us defensively. We felt like. Obviously it wasn't the same on the other side of the ball, but I think when you're clicking on both ends, especially if we come away from that game successful on offense and coming away with a win, I think it's a different deal. It's a different feeling. But that game, and as well as the Wisconsin, I thought Wisconsin just beat us up, and credit to them, and they're a good team, and it shows throughout the rest of the year the way they're playing. They're still undefeated, and they're doing a lot more to other teams than they did to us, which is credit to them. But some of these other teams with the Utah State game and all the turnovers and just turnovers in a bunch of other games, as well as just not capitalizing on creating takeaways on the defensive side. And I mean, there are games that we've left out there on teams that we should have beaten, and that's how I feel about it. But where you are what your record is true, but at the same time, you didn't have to sit like that, and you don't have to just accept it. There's always things that you can do to get better and win.
There has to be some consideration and acknowledgement, too, of the injury situation, personnel situation for BYU this year. No coaches don't want to use it as a reason, but the bottom line is it's been a brutal year for BYU health-wise. And again, it's a major injury. Tanner Mangum, after coming back from injury, getting himself hurt in the Fresno State game, coming back from that and playing in the second half. Now it's an Achilles injury. Whether it's quarterback, all the different running backs, linebacking core, every area of the team except the O-line really has been hit by injury this year. It's a factor. You have to say it's been a rough year that way.
It's been a tough year, and it's been a tough year for those kids, And you talk about a team and losing guys, and it has been rough. But for those players and those kids, and you see them come in at 6 in the morning, showing up for treatment and doing those things, and it becomes hard when you're not playing football and you're not competing and you're just expected to show up and get treatment and go to class and do all that, and start to see those kids, and I feel badly for them. At the same time, I appreciate them and the work that they're putting in, because it'll pay dividends. I had a couple players that I coached at other places where I saw that, and the off season and their dedication and showing up and getting in the cold tub at 5 in the morning when everybody else isn't. I mean, those things pay off. And one of the kids that I had at another school is still playing in the NFL now because of what he went through and just sitting out a whole year. And so I know these kids.
You want to mention that? Does it matter to say who that person is? Is it okay to say who that person is you're talking about?
Yeah, Robert Turbin,
okay.
At Utah State, and he sat out a year. Michael Smith was another running back that was in the NFL. Was the same. Those guys end up sitting out a year, but just get extra work, extra study of film, right? Become better students of the game, and I think some of our players could benefit from that and are benefiting from that while they're sitting out, just getting treatment and getting better.
All right, coming up, it's our last segment for the week. It'll be questions about UNLV from me and questions from Cougar Nation, you, using the hashtag CCBYU. So if you're on Twitter, pop in a question for Coach E using the hashtag CCBYU. CC for Coordinator's Corner. This is the Coordinator's Corner. We're live at JCW's in Provo. Back after this on BYU Radio, ESPN 960, and BYU Football Facebook Live.
Picture this. You have a big change.
Okay, thanks.
JCW's in Provo and the voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell.
All right, so BYU has lost its shot at bowl eligibility for this season, but UNLV is in the bowl hunt, and it's BYU at UNLV Friday night here on the network. And so, Coach Tuiaki, you know, the Rebels will be heavily motivated and inspired. When they play BYU, they always want to beat the Cougars. Everyone does. But they've got some things in mind they want to get to. And just on early glances, what does UNLV show you?
They're a lot like Fresno as far as scheme. You know, they're not as good. Their timing isn't as good as Fresno's, and so we've got to capitalize on that. They've used 3 different quarterbacks. I think their guy got hurt. Their starter got hurt, and they ended up using a receiver, and then now they're up to another quarterback who's won them the last 2 games. And I think that's the guy that they're going to start with. And you know, he's a decent player. The original starter was faster, but he came in this last game against Hawaii and threw a pick, and we didn't see him play after that. And so, you know, they're a good offense. They'll do a good job. The offensive coordinator as well as the run game coordinator are both guys that were in Nebraska, and so they're, I think, run-oriented, but they do a good job keeping everything about even as far as run and pass.
Not a great passing team by production, 106th in yards per game, 104th in passing efficiency, but yeah, a really good rushing team. They're ranked 10th nationally right now in yards per carry, yards per rush, that is, and so that's where they want to go. And if they go there, I know you feel you've got the team to meet them there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's a good matchup for us up front. You know, I know that after this last film session that we had with the D tackles, they practiced really hard. They're really excited to get back in and play. And I think that it's a good challenge for those guys up front. And I think that it's a good matchup for us.
Little trivia note for Coach Tuiaki and Cougar Nation: BYU's never lost at UNLV when playing UNLV. Over the years, BYU's 8-0 all time when playing at UNLV. So Vegas has gotten its wins against BYU here and there, but they've come in Provo of all places. So see if we can keep that string going. Question from Ryan here on Twitter, #CCBYU. How can the defense step up to cause more sacks, TFLs, and especially create turnovers?
It's a combination of a bunch of different things. You know, guys stepping out and making plays. I had a really good conversation with Sione Takataki just last week about his progression as a pass rusher. You know, and he reminds me a lot of another guy that I coached, where his first year I think he ended up having 5, and then the next year he had 19 and a half. And I think Sione has turned that corner, so is Corbin. They're starting to turn that corner as far as you know, all the specifics that when I'm asking them to pass rush, and I think they're doing a really good job. And so those 2 guys coming back next year expect to have really big years. But as far as creating more things, it's just, you know, a guy making a play. You know, everybody staying in their lane. Also, there's a lot of times we just get one of the big plays, we end up knocking a guy off of getting a sack just because somebody else is trying to do someone else's job. It's just little things like that. And so really, when you're not playing well, I think you look at it and you say, okay, we're either not good enough, we don't care enough, or we're not disciplined enough to do everything right. And I think it's the latter for us right now. We just got to continue to play with discipline, and when those opportunities come for guys to make plays, we just have to make them.
Question from Josh coming in on Twitter with the #CCBYU. Coach Tuiaki, who are the leaders on the team that the players listen to, and what are they doing differently maybe this week to get ready for UNLV?
On the defense, you know, Butch is a guy that has a voice. Fred as well. You know, Sione Takataki's really stepped up, and he's not normally a guy that I mean, he talks a lot, but not a guy that is up in the leadership role. But I mean, just this last practice was really good, and those guys being really vocal about you know, not taking the foot off the pedal and just continuing to practice hard and practice the right way. You know, after this loss, we're sitting at 2-8. It was a really good intense practice, you know, and I think that's just credited to the kids and the players about taking ownership and just making sure that nobody's you know, losing belief, at least, in just winning the next 3 and just playing hard. And those guys have done a good job on the defensive side. Okay,
final question from Twitter today from Jeffrey Butler. Coach, how do you feel the players are progressing within your system, and what metrics or stats show growth and improvement to you?
Yeah, there's growth. There's growth, and there's definitely a lot of lumps that are going on. but there's growth, and you know, the system as far as what we changed completely. It was just going to a lot of man coverage and recruiting taller corners and getting those guys in. And some of those kids that we've brought in are probably longer kids that don't have as much experience playing corner, but are just tall kids that can run. You know, it's for those guys just a matter of experience and just time, and I mean, once it starts to click for them, you know, it's hard to gauge and put your finger on one stat and say this is how they're getting better. We can just kind of see little things that they're doing and starting to understand things and just making certain plays, and that's been good to their contribution and just their growth. You know, growing up really with the corners and with the D line, it's just day after day. I mean, all the things that they do, there's little things that show up that just tell me that they're on the right path and playing the way that we want them to.
Okay, final 30 seconds, E. You've mentioned accountability being key. Any other prime motivators to your guys with 3 games to go this year?
Just a love for football, you know, and we have an opportunity to play Division I football, an opportunity to compete, you know, and if that's not enough, then I think we've got the wrong guys, and that's not the case. I think there's guys that want to do well, that want to compete, that want to win, and it's not ideal that we're 2-8 right now, but it's still an opportunity to compete and go beat somebody up on the other side of the ball.
All right, good luck in Vegas on Friday night.
Thank you.
All right, that's Coach Elisa Tuiaki, and that'll do it for this week's Coordinator's Corner from JCW's here in Provo. Our thanks to BYU's defensive coordinator, Elisa Tuiaki, and special teams coordinator, Ed Lamb. Join us next Monday, 1 o'clock here at JCW's in Provo for the Coordinator's Corner on BYU Radio, ESPN 960, and BYU Football Facebook Live. So long. Thank you.